if you could still getting well feeling. We look forward to many more things coming out of you, doing great things. I want to start by thanking the Black Alumni Association and the Student Pan African Association for supporting and promoting this event. Today, we're going to have a conversation, a very informal one, with the author of Mr. Louis C. Author, things. This bro. Amazing, right? Well, he now has that to his resume. Author and historian. And what's amazing is that Lewis's book, Black and the Sabbath, from African Cavalries to the Modern Cowboy, is really changing the way we think about American history. And what's amazing is that the work that you've done has taken us all the way back to Africa with some of the origins of these equestrian traditions. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
First, just a thank you to everybody.
There he goes. That's my nobody. That's not moving emotions. God, what real. This is just impressive. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think I got started on this thing. So, Company Cowboys, Constantine Equestrian is 35 years of helping kids on the horses and whatever. We kind of grew to see the whitewashing of the of black people out of Westerners and the like. Still, common knowledge, and we all shared with each other. I wanted to see a movie called The Woman Kid. And yeah, hey, I'm gonna go see. I'm gonna go see some African Lemon King and Butt. That's what I want to see. And I go see the movie, and there were two storylines in there that just blew me away. One was first, her battle was trying to persuade her own tribe and the rest of the tribes to stop selling themselves, their own people, into slavery. I was like, that's kind of a kind of cop out for people saying, hey, you sold yourselves into slavery. So I'm listening to the story. But then I'm watching her number one enemy is a tribe on horseback, a cavalry. And I stood up because I'm a cowboy. That shit ain't true. Okay? So it caused me to go start digging. And man, once I started digging, what I found was a shot. Okay. So I had never seen anything from Africa. Some people have, but I had on horseback, especially cavalry armors, right? So once I started looking, turns out the African Cavalries were the most powerful militaries in the world from about the 800s to the last defeat of the Moors in 1492. And the fact that they were the most powerful militaries made them the richest and most wealthy countries in the world, which caused the Europeans, as their power rose, to turn their targets on the most rich countries because they wanted to build their own wealth. What's the best way to build it? If you can defeat the top of the totem pole, the people on the top of the world order, and grab it, that's it. That story is not anyway. Completely washed and buried. But there's proof out there, and uncovered some of my book, and I will in the future volumes of the book. If you just have to look a little harder to really find it, and the breadth of that one starts causing me to question everything you almost ever promoted, that we didn't know this. But that's all. So I think that covers that one.
And again, this is an open conversation, so if you all have questions you want, we'll feel free to chime in. But it looks like, the much of America's early equestrian foundation was built on African knowledge. And what is your impression about how that impacted both the early economy of America and just what is your reaction to it?
So again, you have to kind of dig into kind of the reality of it. So if you think of horses were to the world what cars and trucks became to the world, they're the foundation of everything. So the people with the most powerful horse infrastructure ruled the world. That's how it went. So for the U.S. to become dominant and build itself, it had to get equestrian infrastructure built out. Where would they get it? Said, let's go. And they specifically targeted. Now, they targeted a lot of different slave groups because these groups, as I say, they were at the top of the world order. They were very wealthy, very educated, and very experienced in many things. They targeted a lot of them. But the horse target, saying, we will pay extra for equestrian experience if you grab them and bring them in. So the first early slavery, or early years of slavery, were about the knowledge, gathering the knowledge of the Africans. Is that story told anywhere? Not even close. Okay, it's the opposite. And I plugged in the whys of that, but that's where we started. So that grabbing goes Africans' knowledge. So when they robbed them, the slave owners didn't know it. They had to put them on work immediately. Okay, so but they did everything they could to get control of them, from stomping them out, because a lot of them were actually Muslim. So they had to stomp out their religion. They had to, all of these transition points for slavery, from the march, from the jungles and their cities where they were, to holding places. Each place was a transition of training the slave to accept their slavery. So the death rates were massive along the way of people said, I'm not going to do it. So if you think of us as African Americans, the self-selection process, it starts from there and comes all the way. We are survivors type people. That's why we're still here today, because that's all that survived through that trek. Then, of course, we all know about the Middle Passage. But you don't know about, well, you got here, and a lot of them first went to Caribbean, and were there for 2 years in training to become slaves. Okay. So all of that brings us to eventually putting the people and their experience and knowledge to work in the infrastructure of the horses required. So black people fought in the Revolutionary War. Every war the Americans had, the black people were there. Either early on they were the horseback people and fighters because they thought they were fighting to get their freedom, to later where they knew they were slaves, but their expertise was co-opted. So they were the horse trainers in the military. They were the horse trainers of everything. So if you think about a sign of wealth today, what does it look like? Back then it was your horses. So horse racing became a symbol of your power and wealth. And guess what? They're the first trainers all the way up through almost through the 15 years of the Kentucky Derby. The trainers, the jockeys, the horse trainers, and rider trainers, all African or black.
And from that, the actual first semblance of a motion picture, which came to its film in movies, was a series of still photography of a black jockey on a horse. And the horse, they took a series of photos as the horse was running. And so you have the image of the horse still here, and the next image was the horse kind of extended. And then if they did a series of photography, as you flipped it in fast and motion picture, it showed it like the horse right there. So that was actually the first out at what came to be known as film and revolutionized culture.
So that infrastructure being sort of black, whereas the first Kentucky Derby was black, and several Kentucky Derby winners, it all transitioned as the notion of inferiority of Africans settled in and was promoted. So the connection of saying, well, how could this be that these Africans and their knowledge was put to work over here? Because my own knowledge is they're inferior, they didn't know anything. Matter of fact, there was a worry, it was an investigation whether they were even human. That's what a lot of us, especially in our regular schools, most of us probably got past that. But this thing of the Africans were inferior and the like grew over time. Why? Because slavery was making someone the new wealthiest people in the world, namely the plantation owners. And what came as a part of that is down. The wealth of the continent of Africa, which, just to give you a sense of, Mansa Musa in 1312 was producing 50% of the world's gold in 1312. Today, the African continent still has 50% of the world's gold deposits. This tells you what's on that continent. And it's still being taken today, but that whole transition of needing to keep that was a permanent enslavement model that got introduced for black people. Who said we got to keep the land and we got to keep their knowledge because this all is putting money in our pockets. So how do we fix the whole thing so that this thing continues? And it was a curated model of the Africans are inferior, unsophisticated, no training, all of that, heathens. And that model was curated and promoted over time. And the last thing I'll say on that is all of our founding fathers were either directly or indirectly coming from Europe. Right? So Southern Europe was ruled by the Moors for 800 years, 700 years. So the common knowledge of the twist was, the Moors were Middle Eastern Arabs. Now that DNA is available, that's not yet considered. So all of our founding fathers, one way or another, knew that these Africans had ruled Southern Europe, lifted Southern Europe out of the Dark Ages, taught them from bathing to irrigation to farming to food, taught them everything. So they knew they weren't inferior. So, medicine, for instance, medicine, all that. So that curation of the wealthy was a movement to say, how do we stay on top of this wealth? And so that's some learnings for me that a lot of, I don't argue, if you don't live it and believe what you want, but if you want to look together, let's go look. Because if we go look together, I think I can prove it to you. But I'm not going to argue with you, okay? That's not my style. And again, like I say, my retirement career is writing now. And I'm going to say what I got to say. If nobody listens, I'm cool at it. Okay, I just got to say what I got to say.
Let me ask you, Nichols, where'd the term cowboy come from?
Okay, so cowboys was the term they gave to the black people who were tending to be in the cow hands and the horse breakers and all that stuff. When they were training the white boys were called cow hands. They called the black guys cattle boys. Oh, does that sound like it might be because something that was happening? Yeah, so they were calling them cowboy. But over time, as they became prominent in the enrichment of what they could do, it became even a goal of the white cowhands to be as good as a cattle boy. And then to usurp that mantle from the black cowboys, this is what cowboy is. Marlboro man. Okay. So that's kind of how the transition. And one thing the other key for me, these transitions are 100-year transitions. If you start at civilization from the beginning of Ming and you look at the major changes, these are all 100-year plus transitions. So the transition of Africans at the top of the world order to the bottom where we are today, anywhere you go in the world, black people are the least respected, the poorest. I don't care what country you go to, if it's China, Russia, you never even see a black person in Russia, and they got black people out of the hinterlands. I mean, so you got that world order where black people were at the top, now we're at the bottom. And so that's what we're wrestling with in this, as the world wrestles with, these issues. These are 100-year transitions, get ready.
So this is just the first in a 7-1 series. What can we expect to see in some of the other?
So each chapter of the book takes on a stage of, as I say, from African Cavalry, which we've been talking about, all the way up to Modern Cowboys, which there's a whole chapter on Convict Cowboys, which is my son's organization. And we talk about what they're doing today and how they look, and then how their roots connect all the way through. So every chapter there's a phase going through that, with the important ones being this new information about the African connection, the now known or known information about how Hollywood whitewashed the West. So what did that really look like? How did it take shape? And I always say, in those days, who did most of the hard manual labor in the world, in the U.S.? The slave. You got a slave. You weren't doing that hard work. So if you think of every major road where the slaves were, when I drive them, I think, how many slaves died making this road? I think, not the modern road, but over in the roads, right? But Africans, so there's stories of all the way through that theme up to today, country music being a flaming battle zone for, hey, we gotta tell you, you ain't no country music star. You just a bad music person. Don't come over here. So the race issue runs all the way from today all the way straight back through. And so each chapter covers that. And so so this is volume 1, which is the summary of the whole thing. Then volume 2, 3, 4, and 5 goes through each phase all the way through today.
So what about black cowgirls?
Yeah, if I
Actually, before you start, the whole concept of hidden figures could not have been more established than we talked about NASA and all these black women doing computing. And after I thought about it, I said, well, that's an amazing story. What were the black men doing here? I don't know. So we have a story about cowboys. I figure there has to be a story about cowgirls. Right.
So first of all, of the 6 Convict Cavalries, there's a cowgirl. Okay, that's what all of them. Okay. But I will say, when I made my first cut, of course, most of my research staff was AI. I look at AI as the greatest staff in the history of the world and the greatest students in the history of the world. Except if you're not a good boss, you're not going to get the greatest thing out of your staff. And if you're not a good teacher, you're not going to get the best out of your students. So me wrestling with AI was a thing. So in the first cuts, I didn't have any women in cabarets. So I wasn't thinking that much about it until somebody was reading the draft. So wait, I know 2 or 3 over here. What? I said, you know what? You're right. So I went back to and peeled out. Now, there's 3 or 4 mentioned in the book, but in the main one being Gideon Nation, who if you know, it's historic in LA as a historic that figure who came out there in the Western period, and established a lot of what we here today. So one of my chapters, as it builds out the West, will have subsection on women and cowgirls. So that's something definitely that was out there. Matter of fact, at College Line, there's a woman I mentioned in my book who was a leading figure in establishing the black community, and I don't remember the name or come up with or Martin or Morse. That's not Martin. Yeah, but I'll almost, because he asked me about it, and I know another Colorado person over there. Say, hey, these are people, and to the degree that in those days, black communities had to be isolated to do that thing, that were segregated. And as we know, if we look at the long list of segregated black communities that were doing well, segregated black communities did pretty well. And matter of fact, for me, Black Tulsa is just an example, the greatest example that what black people did as they were segregated, that desegregation kind of created a whole different environment that they have kind of majority of our community now is in a different place. So anyway, all that said, that's what's coming about the Black Cowgirls, and I look forward, to exploring it more. It's an important part of our history that it's unification really of the story that we all teach. My aim of who to educate is everybody, but particularly our Black folks who have no idea of these stories. They just have no idea who they are, which is part of many of the problems we face in the Black community, from Black on Black crime and murder and things like that, where kids have no idea of who they are, what their history is. They were curated to be where they are today. Okay? So not knowing that they were ever at the top of the world order. I was thinking of my cartoon, Blaze Watch. And I never thought anything of it until now, when I see a cartoon where it's always a Jungle Bunny African with big limbs and pain. That was what I saw as me, my ancestors. Like, what is that different? Then the other end of the coin, which is the controversy over, was Jesus lack of lighting. There's a whole storyline that says, once you're to get past the imagery and the DNA before 1502, the imagery, discussion, and even the Bible talks about the features that would lead you to believe Jesus was Black.
Here you go, the pair of wolves out of the skies here.
Yeah. So just think, I'm looking for the first person to do the clean psychological study, this straight line. You are forced to stop praying to your Black ancestor, which turned out as Buddhists. But if you're trained to stop praying to the Black one and forced to pray to the white one, and that's who you are, and over the generations, you don't even know that that's the case. In your subconscious, this is me learning from Oxy, what's your subconscious dealing with when it says, I'm striving to be godlike, who's white, and I'm Black, so I can't get them? Okay? You know what I'm saying? So this is my own personal kind of, that'd probably be my fourth book, okay, to address with this. Now, with the lady who's doing the work on post-traumatic slave disorder is doing this. She's pretty close. Well, one of the major themes, a part of that, I haven't seen this one to be a part of it. Now, there's knowledge about, or there's writings about the Pope in the early 1500s commissioned Da Vinci and Michelangelo to repaint the entire Christianity imagery. Commissioned. So the picture that we must see of Jesus everywhere came from Da Vinci, 1050, whatever, 5, whatever it was. So I don't know. I'm willing to look into more and other things together. You want to join me? Let's run.
Well, yes, that's all I'm sorry. Your hand was up first, but
So I grew up in Oakland, and she would have a Black Cavalry parade every year. And it was great. I remember it as a kid, sometimes participating with my grandparents. My grandmother grew up out in Central California, and Chowchilla and such, and had a ranch, and her father and such. So what you got in Oakland is we'd have the Compton Cowboys. We didn't have the next generation coming out to sustain those traditions. You don't have the Black Cowboy parade anymore. So when we talk about the modern cowboy, how do we do that? How do we sustain this tradition? How do we continue spread the this documentary coming out? Is this an opportunity? Is this been the strategy of bringing the Black Cowboy back in the sense?
So I'm just going to tell you my sense of my opinion that actually it would shape some by my son. What's happening with these farmers and digitization and now and the internet and then now AI. History can't get curated anymore because you can get access to the actual documents. You couldn't before. Somebody wrote it, that was it. When we were at Oxy, the Greeks were the foundation of civilization. what I now have seen from looking at the journals of some of the Greek philosophers, Plato, Socrates, that is, they studied for 20 and 30 years under Africans, and that's where they say in their journals where they learned it. So where did it turn into that they were the creators of that? I don't know. But that's what I'm trying to do. And you guys, welcome, come on in and do it. Interrupt and introduce you guys. Hey,
I forgot before.
I need that grand. Hey, Ruth was instrumental in the passing a study group to lend this fairly double that's fabulous season. We guys are just powerful, so we really appreciate what you do. We just haven't done already. It's okay. Hey, so I was answered. So as I answered Jackie your question, so my son is showing you up. So he has a vision. People know what it means. My sister had a version of it, who was the founder of our original Compton Fest. We were rolling with it. I'm kind of always just I'm the businessman trying to make things work. I'm that fact of a visionary. And so when Ren came in and said, my sister said, hey, it's time for me to retire. And I said, okay, well, veterans, we probably got to close it down because I ain't the one. I got a full-time job and you don't even close it down. Randy King said, nope, that too important. I'm going to take the lead. I got some ideas on how to roll with this. And in that, telling me that, he said his vision is that we should be supporting country cowboy communities like all over the world. That's what he said, he's at the world. So as I turned my head to that, and we've been exploring world, then there are pockets in Oakland and all across the country and all across the world. Like we're going to Ghana, my sons and I, in December, and we're going to meet with an urban equestrian group struggling to survive, like us. So it's everywhere. We've been to London. We've seen it. Okay, we've been all over Europe. Not been, but we get communities, and what happens sometimes, people show up at our doorsteps and we just studied from Italy. We had to come see you. This is what we do. Well, what? Okay, so that vision is what is happening, and with our part and everybody else's part, the book part, Puyo's part, it's all kind of coming up. And we'll see how it shapes up. But it's on the foundation of the historical knowledge cannot be hidden anymore. Yeah. He can't lie. It's going to come out. And that's what we're really dealing with. And it's across the board in so many ways,
But it's such a great, it's just such a beautiful community. And I think, especially here in California, that is, it has a huge foundation of the Black Cowboy, but, I just think it's important that I'm just always,
I am one of the last one of those I'll see to that. Yeah, go ahead, Brendan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so on that point, the original excitement for Compton Cowboys was naturally, I think, just, we keep our families, legacy alive. And you ever create opportunity for our Frankie family, you would like that, want to preserve, keep it, make opportunity out of it. And then as it kicked off, it's number one, it started thinking, well, if we're doing this, there got to be other people, doing this too. We can't just be living in the silo world, not like a myth, like an analogy. So I spent the last 5 years of my life going all across America. As soon as I heard that there was a Black Cowboy or a farm or anywhere, I just took myself there. He drove, when above and beyond, they got a truck like a Megan out there all across the country, so I could just do that, right? So there are clubs all over America, and we are now building a national and international coalition. And the idea is to be able to enterprise it so that we can continue to build businesses that continue to do the work, keep the farms alive, and use the businesses to bring them ethically in full circle, such that it continues to perpetuate and create opportunities for generations and kids. And so a lot of that mission exciting really has been through, because modern generations are hit to technology, entertainment, television, cell phones. So our strategy was to weed those audiences where they are, fucking attacking social media with our story, attacking entertainment business with our story, attacking music business. So with the interesting the last 3 to 5 years, I've just started to see that Beyonce more in his documentary and things. There's a collective interest in first preservation and expansion. And so we're proud to be like at the forefront of that because we've been doing it so long and people have kind of defaulted to us as kind of like the gatekeeper or the like lead curator of what that's going to be. And so that's kind of where we are down. And so it's cool that I come for some of that's now right the history as we pull up like build no boots and I know and not Spain. So
Thank you again. Yeah, question.
I have 3 things I wanted to just kind of talk about. I remember in high school, I guess I started off as an English major, and there was a book called Black California, and I just wanted to know if you're how you're connected with that, if you're connected with that, and Louis Gates does all of these documentaries connected in DNA and going back to people's ancestries for centuries to see if there's some kind of connection with DNA with certain individuals. I thought that this came to mind. And then being, being part of Occidental, the Pasadena Rose Parade, it's right around the corner. And then in high school, I marched to the Rose Parade, like blew in the hand. But watching it, there's always the Buffalo Soldiers Department, the Pasadena Parade. I wonder if you were connecting Kim and
Start with the parade one. That's actually we were invited until especially when my sister was in charge. She asked in every parade we were going and said you got to work your way up parade wires. But when it got to the Rose Bowl, the requirements were pretty strict. We said, "Well, we can't really beat that," So we never really actually took the full shot at the Rose Parade, but it is important so you can see how many horses they have in it. For the Raptor Emperor, for the horses to be represented, that would be a place where this history, this documentary can get some traction in that damn parade to bring some reality core. So that's one. Then the book itself, The Cowboy, it's one of my resources. I can't recall my memories there. That is an old man. But it's one of my resources, and then I used it, but I don't recall the specifics off the top of my head. So, but I have probably 200 resources. There's so much written. There's so many people who know some of this story, but it doesn't get told. I give this example. Everybody knows who Clyburn is, the communist Clyburn. So
South Carolina.
Yeah, South Carolina. So he's responding to a comment by the Florida governor. Who said, slavery wasn't that bad. Black people learned that. Right. They learned some skills. So Clyburn, and seeing that interview, says something, and I'm sitting there going, how did you know that? And you ain't never said it before. And what he said is, I know from my ancestors that black people taught us, the plantation owners, how to build their crops out to grow them and make them massively productive. They learned from my ancestors. That's what he said. I said, and then I thought about, you know what? If he said that before all the way up to at least Jim Crow in, he probably would have been killed. Okay? So this is the stories that are out there. Some of pieces, things like that. I say things like, I just learned through this process that the Alamo was a fight over slavery. One of my favorite movies. Haven't heard of one. The heroes. Danny Crockett, Jim Bowie, they're my heroes. And I learned that really what they were fighting for was to keep slavery in Texas when Mexico had abolished slavery in 1829. Wow. Long before we did. So they abolished slavery and they were fighting. And so all of northern Mexico they were fighting get the slavery out. So Texas was the border town, and they said, no, we all from the U.S., we want to keep slavery. Matter of fact, you guys got to return all those runaway slaves that are going to Mexico. And then I learned there was the Southern Lake to Mexico of the Underground Railroad. Never heard of it ever to life. Okay? Now, if they abolished slavery, it had black people that were there where Bob was snit. So that it had to be immediately it makes sense that there was a massive Underground Railroad going in. Texas saying, because the biggest thing in slavery, one of the biggest things is you got to return runaway slaves. Remember, there was a big fight over that. So, Mexico, return our slaves. No. What? Okay, then Mexico. You're Texas is Mexican territory. You got to ensling it. No. That eventually that resulted in the America taking over all of northern Mexico, from Texas to New Mexico to Arizona to California, to all that. All of that was part of the slavery battle that started over here in Texas. Unbelievable. Now again, I say, you might not believe me. I'm having an argument with you. Let's go look. Okay, that's my question.
I was going to follow up on your question about the sustainability. Like, flying horses is expensive. So, basically, and into modern day, how was that gotten?
So two things. Courses in for everybody. Okay. So, we get kids, you have field trips, 30 kids come. You know whose horses. There's two of them are like this the entire field trip. Okay. So those kids are the ones we gotta try to get to for sure. But it's expensive. We need money. We're out fundraising. Randy's model was to build these for-profit activities that then turn around and fund it. But even that, our budget is like this. Okay. So it's expensive. So our position is if we're going to help this for ourselves, we're going to get some stable kind of funding model. And if we're going to help the world in those little pockets, we got to get a steady funding model where we can help. So our first idea now is that I sent over the COO job because he twisted my arm. My position is, what is it that is going to get us the stable peak money? And that's what we've been working on, building the structure, all that stuff. So we learned from things like what Crystal Stairs did, who our founder, who's not here today, Crystal Stairs is a massive symbol of what it takes to really move to the next level. We never kind of really had it, could do it, but now we're moving on it. So that's one. Then once we build that model that's workable, you go out and say, hey, here's a business plan to build this out. And there's philanthropy money. The difference you're in is when you're competing with somebody who has a basketball program, and it costs them $100 a month for a basketball program, and we $100 a month per kid. Ours is $1,500 a month per kid. Okay, for horses. So you hit the nail on the head. It is expensive. That's why we struggle. That's why our program is only where it can be. But we have a vision for how to move on that. We're working it, and with my son's leadership and my get tool right, we think we can do.
Yeah, to the point, leveraging the private sector is where you're going to make it happen. A lot of these ranches are philanthropic endeavors, and those things take a lot of effort to fundraise, and you're ready for grants. And the money you spend is a little far beyond what they really give you, and it takes forever to get that money. It's always kind of a perpetual loop of just hustle and struggle. So with all the new interests, because how it impacts the new is, oh, this is cool. We're going to squeeze you for everything you got. And so my position is, yeah, you got money to spend, come holler at me, though. Because we can give you the story, but you ain't going to be free like you, or you ain't going to steal it from us and capitalize on it. You really need to make us equitable partners in the storytelling. So you want to make, we're in development, doing our major feature film right now. We're doing major clothing lines. We're doing major music activations, and all that stuff is done in fundraise and bring resources back to the farm. And so that's what we want to do, is we want to fine tune and blueprint that model to say, you got a black ranch in this modern society, these are the ways you can make it viable. And these are the ways you make it philanthropic. And then once we got that model, we're going to take that to the Oakland clubs, Black Saddle Club Association, to the Atlanta Saddle Club, to Fletcher Street in Philadelphia, to New York Ryan Association in New York, Federation of the Black Cowboys in New York, and say, this is how you do it. We don't got to struggle no more because everybody want a piece of our story and the action. You can give them ways to buy it that gives them what they want and then give you what you need to make it happen. So that's what we're doing. The opportunities like these George Field thing is, for example, they come up saying, want to tell the story. George Field is Black himself, but it's an example where Howard can help do work. Everybody in Black America got paid to be on camera. They did fundraising and donations to both branches and programs, gave out big grants to be there, spent money to be the exclusive film partners of the rodeos and everything. So all the different partners and people you see in the film all benefited from their involvement in this. And now all our stories are told on Mom, but you're paying. So opportunities like that means developed over and over and over and over. And that's how, that's at least that's my vision for how to kind of like make it a bigger, more collective successful. And with that, I give it go with my kids, his grandkids with him. Ramping our home, so I don't use out.
So thank you, man.
And you guys are would have chicken. I don't that to very increase. So
Yes, we're going to try to wrap this up. One of my last questions was educated hood rat press.
So yeah.
If you look in the book, inside cover, it says educated hood rat press. And then I can review that. Just yeah.
I was actually, I'm gonna tell you something ago. I heard you all were talking about your husband to someone you grew up with. He said, "Yeah, I got an educated husband." He just many years old. He starts. So as I'm starting to write, and I'm thinking of all the dialogues I get into with different people every day, my perspective is generally is unique from having grown up in housing projects for another, making my way to the top of the academic world, going into corporate America into some of the top spots, and then moving back to in Concord as my mission took me there. But I remember all my peers, including Rich, he grew up in Concord. Nigga, why you moving to Concord? Sorry. I can't take you reach your kids there. And I said, it's so God told me to do, I would do it. He said, okay, I got you. That's how it wow. Okay. So then I'm in the hood since 1992. And I'm dealing with all these urban kids. And I'm seeing issues from a different perspective than most people. And it's a place where if I give any inkling that I'm educated, I'm thrown out. It was because of y'all. So I had went a whole different communication model back to where I was, but trying to bring my knowledge to bear in that. So when I started writing, I said, that is often a different space for me, that distance. And I said, how do I capture that? And come back to that. Yeah.
Talents and variants. Educated rap. Where you go? There you go. Are there any other? You don't know? No. The end game. Y'all still let you on that.
See, because he grew up in Compton, went to deny all that. And so she knew that she was telling her from flip. I got something special.
I take it as that. All right. Well, that is it with the questions. I want to thank once again the Black Alumni Association, the Black Alumni Organization. Please get a copy of this book. It's an amazing read, and it will teach you something that you clearly never knew before. And we want to thank Lou for sharing.
Well, Mark Geltier, you're going to sell the books, the signed books for $20 in BAM, and come leave your signature up here. And, that's how we will. Any confession go?
Easy peasy.